Barrett, I hope you're having a great Monday. Welcome into the game here in T-Town.
Thanks, Ryan. Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Hey, no doubt. Want to spend a couple of minutes here going back. Redshirt rule. I'd love to hear your analysis as we implemented that rule last week.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I think I've always been a guy who wants 5 years to play 5, but I know that's really unrealistic. I mean, as much as I'd like to see that, that's just not going to happen. So basically what you've got is 4.5 years to play 5 now, which I think everybody wins in this situation. From a player perspective, especially for young players, you can make a decision now as a recruit to say, hey, look, I can go, work behind somebody who's an established star, get a few games in, perhaps preserve a red shirt, but also get enough touches and enough practice to prepare me right away once the red shirt is gone, either in the middle of the season or the next season. And then as a coach, you love the flexibility. You love the idea of having the ability to build some depth, and if injuries start to take a toll, sort of adjusting on the fly how you approach your freshman class. I think let's just use Justin Fields in Georgia for an example. Now Kirby Smart has the chance to say, look, we're going to put in a package or two for Justin Fields early in the season, middle of the season, whatever. But he also has the ability to, maybe put a red shirt on him if they want to, instead of, going through the motions and burning his red shirt for basically a package or two. So, that's great. I think for fans, it definitely gives more meaning to those cupcake games. We all know in the SEC, we have Cupcake Saturday, a week before the rivalry games. We have, some FCS, some lower level group of 5 schools on the schedule. So, those games become more meaningful now because, if you're a fan and you know that your quarterback or your star running back shooting, well, the guy who might be stepping in is probably, going to have a red shirt, could potentially have a red shirt, so you get to see him. But I think the biggest winner is the lower to middle tier bowl games, because I think you'll have, especially if, you have a veteran leaving and he's leaving, you can perhaps preserve a player, give him only 3 games in the regular season, and try him out in the bowl game either as more of a focal point, or if a star player sits out to save himself in the NFL draft, make him the starting player at whatever position. So everybody wins. I think it's a great rule. I love the options it creates and the intrigue it gives college football basically on every level.
So when we go back here just for a couple of minutes and you think about the length and the number of games that we've increased, because I made the case watching Alabama, a roster like Alabama, go through injury situations with linebackers last year. The year prior, when we talk about playing an extra game, I say, there's probably enough talent that the injuries really, they weigh in on a team like Alabama and other teams that play the longer season. This gives them some flexibility here now.
Yeah, it does. And look at what happened. Now, Najee Harris was obviously a big part of the national championship run last year, especially the second half against Georgia. But, if you're Nick Saban, wouldn't you have liked the idea to say, hey, look, Najee, you're going to be part of this rotation in specific games, but we're also pretty loaded at running back. We might potentially redshirt you depending on how the season goes, how, who gets hurt or whatever. And the same can be said for any star. And look, I think Georgia is another perfect example. Think of Zamir White, who was a 5-star running back, and he tore his ACL last October in high school, or November in high school, enrolled at Georgia early specifically to get more reps and get more treatment from Georgia doctors. Well, he might not be ready at the start of the season, and even if he is, you might not want to throw him in a game, but come October, come November, especially against, some weaker competition or in blowouts, you can try him out there and still preserve his red shirt. So, it's just so great on so many levels. I'm really happy that they've put it out there and done something that I think benefits really everybody.
Barrett, do you think this will help or hurt Nick Saban in making this quarterback decision? Because this gives him some flexibility here with Jalen Hurts. If he doesn't win it, then you could tell him, hey, listen, we're not going to play you. We're going to not go over those 4 games. We'll keep that red shirt eligible or keep you eligibility there where you'll have 2 years remaining. Does this help or hurt Nick Saban?
Oh, it helps because, again, it gives him that option. I don't necessarily know if that matters because, two-way street. Nick Saban has that option. That doesn't mean Jalen Hurts likes that option. or wants to go through that. So, certainly it's Saban, more flexibility. But I think in terms of the quarterback battle specifically at Alabama, Jalen Hurts can start somewhere. I think everybody knows that. He can start in a lot of different places. So if he's not the starting quarterback, coming out of fall camp, or Nick Saban does what he typically does and just sort of lets it bleed into the season, and he realizes that, redshirt or not, he's not going to be the starting quarterback, then that's going to affect him to fail. So, yeah, it definitely helps Nick Saban because there are more and different, cards to play. I'm just not so sure that it really matters because in the end, if Jalen doesn't win the job, he's probably going to fold.
Barrett, when you look at this quarterback situation here, help me find ways that Jalen Hurts is your quarterback. Can you come up with any reasons? Because we've been asking the audience all day today to come up with reasons why we think Jalen Hurts could be the starting quarterback. Can you help us add a few to this?
I think the only way, he's the starter is if Saban does let it bleed into the season. And Tua in the opener against Louisville just doesn't have it. Makes a lot of mistakes he's made in the second half against Georgia. Now, granted, we all know what the great things were that he did, but he also made some mistakes. So, if he does that against Louisville and then comes back the next week and starts to do the same thing, then, yeah, I think, the battle that bled into the season might go in Hurts' favor. Now, I don't think that'll happen. I think Tua can handle it. But, I think that's the only way that something like that goes down, barring some injury or some unforeseen circumstance.
But aren't we going through the same offseason that we did? We've had reports, coming out from the Elite 11. Later this week, it'll be the Manning Passing Academy. And I'm sure I can already predict what it's going to look like. Jalen Hurts is throwing the ball so much better. I'm not buying for it like I did last year. I bought it last year, and I'm like, okay, this guy's improved the offseason. But there's a big difference between throwing against air and throwing against SEC defensive backs.
Yeah, we're hearing the same stuff, and I bought it last offseason too. And, I don't want to do that again because we all saw the thing about it, though, is how much did they really give Jalen? And the answer to me is I don't know because we're not allowed to see practices. But, they did keep Jalen in the comfort zone. They focused on the things he does well, just like they did with Lane Kiffin 2 years ago, and sort of didn't bother with the stuff that, maybe he wasn't as comfortable with, but maybe he had improved a little bit. And when the lights were on against Alabama, against Georgia in the national title game, maybe he just wasn't mentally there. But, by and large last year, they just protected him because clearly what he was doing and what he was being asked to do worked. So I'm not buying it. I don't think he's improved as a passer just because I don't want to go down that road again and be suckered into something that's not true. But I also don't think that last year is really that much of an indication that he can't do it. I think it's more of an indication that they just didn't ask him to do it. Part of that is, lack of comfort with him throwing the ball, but part of that is just being in a comfort zone where you don't want to screw up. That Jalen can go out there and not screw up more times than not.
But Barry, we talk about Nick Saban and all this recruiting positively in a right direction, right? But you look at these NFL guys, Robert Foster at Buffalo, Calvin Ridley right there in your city is eye-opening camp so far, and I know it's done, and we'll be back in training camp in July, but a lot of buzz coming around Calvin Ridley. But then we travel to Washington Redskins, an undrafted guy by the name of Cam Sims. I'm going to read you just a quick thing from their website. This was their analysis. Jay Gruden mentions wide receiver Cam Sims as one of those guys that has stood out. And it goes back on Redskins.com, the official website. It said, we predicted Cam Sims would be a standout player this offseason for a reason. He may have gone undrafted, but his lack of production in Alabama was down to terrible quarterback player and virtually nothing else. So Cam Sims fitting in has a chance to make an NFL roster. This is not good if you're trying to sell me that Jalen Hurts is improved.
No, it's not. And obviously NFL scouts and talent evaluators understand that Jalen, when he was forced to pass, was not that, not that great, not that efficient. And it's true, he wasn't. And, at times terrible quarterback play would be what you describe, Jalen, if you take out all of the other stuff that he provided to that offense and that he was asked to do for that offense. So, yeah, it's an indictment. There's no doubt. I mean, when you say, hey, this guy who's a great receiver didn't do anything in college, why not? It's basically the same conversation we have had with LSU receivers for like a decade because they haven't had a quarterback. So, I get it, and you're right. But, how much of what people saw taped, how much of what people saw, when they're allowed behind those closed doors as NFL scouts, were still byproducts of Jalen just being asked to do what is necessary of him. I'm not to say that that's all true, but again, those NFL scouts might be sitting there saying, hey, look, we saw what we saw in games, and it wasn't great. They didn't ask him to do a whole lot in games, and in practice, there wasn't much sample size either because they're preparing for opponents. So, I don't know. I don't know how much of an indictment something like that is, but it certainly isn't good. But again, it also makes me not want to buy into that Jalen has improved as a passer hype this offseason. But I don't think it's necessarily impossible. I just think that a lot of us, myself and you included, just don't want to be burned again.
Hey, Barrett, which new SEC coach will have the most wins in 2018? You can even throw Dan Mullen, even though he's not new to the SEC. He's at a different place. Who will have the most wins of all these new head coaches?
In year one, I think it's going to be Joe Moorhead.
I
think Florida's probably dancing around 8 or 9 wins. Jimbo Fisher might be 8 or 9 wins. I think Mississippi State's more likely towards 9 than 8. So, not to say that he's the best long term. I think this year, I think it's setting up pretty well for him to have a lot of success considering he's coming back.
Hey, Barrett, I always appreciate the time. SiriusXM, there you can find him, Barrett Sallee, on the Twitter account, and then CBSSports.com, CBSSports.com. Barrett, as always, thank you for your time. I hope you have a great Monday.
All right, thanks, Ryan. You too.